In this video, we are going to give an introduction to gRPC. We will see what gRPC is, its strengths and weaknesses, how it differs from REST, SignalR, and GraphQL, and then we will make a simple gRPC server, which we will use both from an ASP.NET Core application and from a winform application. Before we talk about gRPC, we must talk about RPC. RPC, or Remote Procedural Call, is when a program on one computer executes a function of another program on another computer, but done in a way where we don't have to worry about communication between the two machines. In other words, for us, when we use RPC at the code level, it is as if we invoke any function of our program when in fact we are remotely executing a function from another machine. Roughly, that is RPC. According to its official website, gRPC is a high-performance, open-source, universal RPC framework. Let's break down this definition. RPC framework. When it says RPC framework, it means that as a framework, it will do for us much of the common logic that exists when implementing RPC. Therefore, one of gRPC's missions is to make life easier for us when implementing RPC. Universal. It is universal because it is multi-platform and multi-language. With gRPC, we will be able to build RPC services where applications of different technologies will be able to communicate with each other. In other words, we can use gRPC to communicate between C#, C++, Go, Java, Node, Python applications, among others. Open source means that we can find its source code on sites like GitHub. High performance means that, compared to alternative, it is quite fast. With this, we should have an idea of what gRPC is. It is an RPC framework that works in different environments and allows us to work efficiently. As we said in the definition of gRPC, one of its strengths is efficiency. This means that, in general, it is fast at making client-server communication. One of the reasons for this is that by default it uses protobuf, which is a mechanism to serialize data in an efficient way. In addition to speed, protobuf generates lighter messages, which is important in limiting bandwidth waste. Another advantage is the generation of code. As we will see later, we have code generation tools at our disposal to facilitate the elaboration of clients and servers using gRPC. A weakness of gRPC is that it has limited browser support, so you could not, for example, consume a gRPC service from a Blazor, Angular, or React application that lives in a browser. There is gRPC Web to mitigate this problem a bit. However, gRPC Web does not support all the features of gRPC, so it is somewhat limited. One of the places where it makes sense to use gRPC is in microservices environments, where speed is highly important. It can also be used in limited environments, such as cell phones and even IoTs, environments where communication between different technologies is needed, or environments where bidirectional streaming is needed. Let's see how gRPC compares with REST, SignalR, and GraphQL. These are all technologies that, in one way or another, help us communicate between different computers. They all have their place. Neither one overshadows the other one completely. Neither one is supposed to replace the other. When we talk about REST, we typically refer to the typical use of the HTTP protocol to make client-server requests. We normally use JSON in the body of the HTTP request and response to send and receive messages. REST is cross-platform, like gRPC. We can use it from practically any modern language. The downside to REST is in gRPC performance, which is generally faster. However, an advantage of REST is that it works entirely in browsers, unlike gRPC, which currently has limited functionality in browsers. Therefore, if you are going to make an application in Blazor, Angular, React, Vue that will work in a browser, you should use REST for communication with a server. However, if you need real-time communication, you can use SignalR. With SignalR, we can establish a real-time connection with a server. A use case will be a chat application, where messages can reach us at any time, and the server proactively sends us these messages. Also, SignalR shines in multicasting. Going back to the chat example, if you are chatting with a group of people and you send a message, SignalR is in charge of spreading the message to all the people supposed to receive the message. gRPC is not good at multicasting. Although, as we said, gRPC can do bidirectional streaming, where client and server can send a continuous streaming of information independently. This does not make it able to handle multicasting. Finally, we have the case of GraphQL, which serves to allow the client to request the desired specific data. This can be useful if, for example, you have tables with an immense amount of columns, and you have clients that need different columns. These clients are going to be able to request specific columns, instead of having to request them all, spending bandwidth unnecessarily. gRPC does not have this ability. In gRPC, what is done is that the server establishes a contract, defining the functions to expose and the types of data to use. In this way, the client knows what to send and what he will receive, but does not allow the dynamism of GraphQL data selection. Therefore, no technology replaces the other. Each one has its own place. Let's move on from theory to practice. We will make a small gRPC server in ASP.NET Core, and then we will make two clients through which we will communicate with the service. We are here in Visual Studio, and by the way, I am using Visual Studio Preview because I will be creating a winforms application later in the video. Now let's create a new project here, and let's say gRPC here, and we're going to find this template gRPC service. I will click on next, and I will name it gRPC test, and then let's create this, and finally let's click on create once again. This will create a ASP.NET Core application which will be configured to use gRPC. As I just said, this is a ASP.NET Core application with the program class, the startup class, the app settings JSON, and everything that any ASP.NET Core application can have. This means that we can treat this as any other ASP.NET Core application that happens to have some endpoints which are going to use gRPC, but this project can have controllers, views, and whatever we want. For example, let's go to the startup class, and here we're going to see, and let's minimize this, here we're going to see that we have our configure services, which only have the gRPC service enabled, and here we have the configure method in which we have the HTTP request pipeline, and here we have the use endpoints, and here we're saying map gRPC service, and we are configuring this greeter service, and we're going to see the greeter service in a minute, but first I want us to go here to the Protos folder to this grid proto file. This is a proto file in which we define the services that are going to be defined in our gRPC server. The first line says syntax proto3. That is because there is proto2 and proto3. By default, proto2 is used, so we have to say syntax equal to proto3 in order to use the modern proto3 language specification. Also, here we have this service, which is called greeter. You can think of a service as an C# interface. In a C# interface, you define method signatures, which classes should be implementing if they wish to implement the interface. So you can see this line of code here as a method signature, where say hello is the name of the method, hello request is the input type of the method, and then returns, hello reply is the output data type. So in order to implement this interface, remember we're just making an analogy, in order to implement this interface that we have here, our class will have to implement this say hello method, which will have a parameter of type hello request and a return type of hello reply. Now again, this is just an analogy. This is not really an interface. As we will see in a minute, this will actually generate a base class, and this will be a method that we have to override if we want. After that, we have this hello request, which is a message. a message, you can see it as a class. So this hello request is going to be compiled into a class which will have one property. In this case, it will be a string property with the name, and it have this value here. This is not the value of the property. This is not some sort of default value. No. Here in protobuf, we need to give to each property of each message a unique number, a unique value. Like 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't have to be in order, but it is common to do it in ascending order. For example, if I want to define an int property, let's say int 32, I have to say int 32, and let me say age just as an example. I have to say 2, for example, because the field 1 is already in use by the name property here. Of course, we don't want to do this, so I can delete this line of code. And then another message, which will be compiled into a class called helloReply, will have this property message here, which is going to be a string, and it also has this one value here, which is not some sort of default value for the message property, but it is a unique value that helps the serializer identify this value. I like to see this as some sort of array. Like we're saying here that the first value of the array is going to be a 1, and then the second value of the array, let's say here 2 again, it will be a 2. So the first value of the array is going to be this message, and the second value of the array is going to be this property age, and so on. Again, this is just a metaphor. It is not really an array, but I like to see it that way because it makes sense to me. So let's delete this and let's continue working. As we said, this service here is going to be compiled into a base class. What is that base class? What is it being used? Well, it is being used in the greeter service. So let's go there. Let's go here and let's go to services, and here we have that greeter service. This is our class. This is a class that we're supposed to build. Now in the default template, it is built for us. And here we have this greeter base. If we press F12 here and we go here, we're going to see that we have this sayHello method. This sayHello method, which is virtual, has a return type of helloReply, and let's go here, and an input type of helloRequest. And if we go here, these are the same types. We have sayHello as the name, helloRequest as the input type, and helloReply as the output type, which is exactly, let's go here, which is exactly what we have here. We have helloReply, sayHello, and helloRequest. Now, beside helloRequest, we have this server call context, which is another type that gRPC gives us to analyze the context in which we are executing our gRPC service. Now, as we said, this is virtual, which means that we can override this sayHello method, and that is exactly what we're doing here in the greeter service. We're saying override, which means that we're overriding the sayHello method, and here we're putting the code that will be run when a client tries to invoke the sayHello method that we're defined in this proto file that we have here. As you can see, this is a really simple method that takes a request, a hello request, and says hello and the name of the person that we sent. So it is perfect for us to test. So let's create a client for this service. Let's go to the Solution Explorer, and we're going to create a new project. We're first going to start with a razor page project, and then we're going to do a winform project. So let's right click here and let's add a new project, and let's say ASP.NET Core web application. Let's click on next, and we're going to say razor pages client, and let's click on create. And now we're going to select web application template, and we're going to click on create. This is going to be a really simple application because we only want to test the gRPC service. And now let's go to the Solution Explorer. We're going to open Pages, and let's go to Index here. And here we have this HTML here. And let's also open the code behind here. And here is the code from which we're going to execute our gRPC service. Now first we need to generate the client code for the gRPC service. What does that mean? As we said before, gRPC has tools to generate code. Just like we generated this base class that we have here, we also have code to generate a client that is going to consume our gRPC service. So let's go to the Solution Explorer, and what we have to do is to make a reference from our Razor Pages client project to our protobuf file, to our proto file. So let's right click here, let's click on add, and let's go to service reference. And now let's click here. Here you have service reference, OpenAPI, gRPC. So let's go here, add, and let's click on gRPC, next. And then we have two options. We can use a file, which we have in our computer, or we can use a URL in case the product file is available through a URL. In our case, we're going to use file. So let's click on browse, and let's go here to gRPC test. And let's go here, and let's go to protos, and let's select our grid proto file. Let's click on open. What kind of classes we want to generate? Well, this Razor page is going to be a client, so we want to generate client code. So let's click on here, and let's click on client, and let's click on finish. And now this is going to generate all the code. It is going to install the libraries in order for this to work, and it has successfully finished. So let's click on close, and let's use this. Click on here, and let's save. And now we are here in our index model. And here, in the constructor of the class, we're going to initialize the code to execute our gRPC server. So first we need a URL. What is the URL? Well, for that we can just run this project that we have here, this gRPC test project. So let's make sure it is set as the startup project. And now let's press Ctrl F5 to run the application. It is going to use Kestrel because right now IIS does not support gRPC, because gRPC uses HTTP2, and there are still some limitations on IIS and IIS Express for HTTP2, so we are stuck with Kestrel. And here we have this URL, HTTPS, localhost 5001. As you can see, we only have HTTPS because, again, we are using HTTP2, which forces us to use TLS. So let's copy this, and let's close this, and let's go here, and let's say var URL, and we can just paste this here. In real life, of course, this should come from the app settings JSON or whatever configuration provider, but for now we're just going to paste this here. Now let's go here, and we need to initialize a channel. With a channel, we're going to be able to hit the gRPC located in this endpoint that we have here. So let's say var channel, and we're going to see gRPC, we're going to say gRPC channel, and now let's press dot for address, and let's paste the URL here, and now we're going to build the client. So we're going to say client, let's say just client equal to new greeter dot greeter client, and we're going to pass the channel. So let's pass the channel here, and now let's generate this as a read-only field here, and that's actually it. Through this client, I can invoke this sayHello method from the greeter service in a really simple manner, as we're going to see. So what I'm going to do is that I am going to create a public void onPost method, which is going to execute when I post a form in this index CS.html. And what we're going to do here is that we're going to initialize the hello request. Remember that from the grid profile, we are saying that the sayHello method takes as a parameter a hello request type. So we need to initialize an object like this, and this is really simple. All that we have to do is to say hello request, which is the name of the variable, equal to new hello request. And we have access to the hello request because we generated the client code in order to consume our gRPC service. So let's say hello request.name, and we can put here whatever name the user enters. So what we're going to do is that I am going to come here, and I am going to create a new property, which is the value that the user is going to send through a form. So I'm going to say name here, and I have to say here bind property here, and now I'm going to say here name. We're going to build the form in just a minute, but now let's say bar result equal to client, and here we can see that we have say hello and say hello async. So I can do sync or async. I will choose async, and then I will pass hello request. But since I am using async here, I need to say async here and task here because I want to say await here, await. And now I will create yet another property, which is going to be the return message. So let's say message here. And this result type, of course, is of type hello reply. So we can say message, which is this property that we have here that we just created. message equal to result.message, and that message, remember, that comes from the grid profile. It is this message that we have here. So this is done. With these simple lines of code, I am invoking this function that we have here from another project which may live in another server when I publish these applications. Now let's go to the index.cs HTML and let's create a simple form. Let's go here, let's say form, and let's say method post, and let's say name, input sp4, and let's say name, and this name that we're using here, it is this property name that we have here. And now let's say button send, and that's it. Now let's create a div here which is going to have a simple message from gRPC service, and here we're going to say model message, and this message, it is this property that we have here. And that's actually it. With this, we're ready to run this example. Now let's go to the Solution Explorer, because of course we need to run these two projects at the same time. So let's right click here on the solution and let's click on Set Startup Projects, and let's say multiple startup projects, and let's say here click Start and click Start, and let's click on OK. And now let's make a test. Let's press Ctrl F5 to run both applications. Here, as you can see, we have our project, our gRPC server, and here we have our Razor Pages project. I can write something like Felipe here. Let's press on send, and here we have hello Felipe. And then I can say whatever name I want, and I can do this again. And if we go here, you're going to see that we're indeed executing our gRPC server, and then we're getting this reply from the server. You can see this if we close this here, and we close this here, and let's go to the Reader service, just in case you want to see it. Let's click on here, let's put a breakpoint here, and now let's press F5 to run the application in debugging mode. And let's see that again. I can come here, I can write Felipe, and let's click on send. And let's go here, and as you can see, we are indeed in the Reader service, which is an application that lives on potentially another server or whatever. And here we have the request, and here we have my name, and that's it. And let's press F5 to continue the execution, and here we have hello Felipe. And of course, if we stop executing the application and we make a simple modification like putting a comma here, and then we press Ctrl F5 again, we're going to run our applications, and if I enter Felipe here and I press send, we have hello comma Felipe, which means that we can immediately see the effects of updating the code of our service. Now, we are not limited to only using ASP.NET Core as a client. We can use almost any other .NET application, and of course, as we said, any other technology like a Node application, Go, Ruby, Python application, or whatever. But in this example, in this video, we're going to use a winform application. If you cannot use winform and you want to follow along, you can use something like a console application or a worker service application or something like that. So let's close this and let's go back to Visual Studio and let's go to the Solution Explorer, and remember that I am using a previous Visual Studio, and that is why I can use winforms applications, because at the point of recording this video, winforms for .NET Core is in preview. So let's say winform, let's click on here and let's click on next, and now let's say winforms client and let's click on create, and here we have our winforms client application. I can double click on here on form 1, and that is going to open the designer of winforms. I can use this toolbox here and I can drag and drop some UI really quick. So let's put this here, let's put a button here, let's put another label here, which is going to be the result. Let's put it here, and I need a text box here. So let's say click here, F4 to open properties, and let's say name, which is the name of the person, and now let's click on here and let's do the same. You can fixate this here. And now let's go to the name of this control, which should be text box name, txt name, just so it does have a meaningful name. And let's click on here and let's say button send, and the text of this button is going to be send, enter. And finally this label here is going to be called label result. So let's say label result, enter. And of course the text should be nothing. So let's put this here. And now I will double click on here and this generates this method that is going to execute when we click the button. Now let's minimize this. And now we need to do the same that we did in the Razor Pages application. We need to get a reference of the proto file from our project and then generate the client and then use it. And that is really easy. We don't have to do anything differently. So let's go to the Solution Explorer and let's right click on the WinForms client project and let's go to Add and let's go to Service Reference. We're going to repeat all of the steps. Let's go here, Add gRPC. Next, let's go to File, Browse, and let's look for our proto file, which is here, protos, grid proto, and let's generate client code. So let's click on Finish, and this is going to install the NuGet packages that are necessary, and this has successfully finished. Let's click on Close, and now let's close this, let's save, and now I don't even have to write the code, I can just copy and paste. Let's go here, let me copy this code from here, and let me go here, and in the constructor of the class, I am going to paste this, and I need to bring these two namespaces, this one gRPC net client, and this one gRPC test. And now let me generate this as a field, as a read-only field here. And now, again, I don't have to create a code to invoke the say hello method. I can just come here and use the exact same code here. Now let's copy this and let's paste it here. We have our hello request, we have our say hello async, but I will not use async programming here. Just to make it different, I am going to say hello. And now, as you can see, this is a hello reply result, though here I have to say label result.text. And that's actually it. Look how easy it was to do this. Now we're going to test this. So let's go here to the Solution Explorer, let's right click on here, and let's say set startup projects. Now we only want to run the gRPC test, which is our gRPC server, and the WinForms client. So let's say start, and here in Razor Pages client we don't want to run this, so let's say none. Let's click on OK, and let's press Ctrl F5 to run our applications, and let's see that we have this WinForms client here, and let's see that we have also this gRPC server running here, and I can say Felipe, and I can press send, and as you can see we have hello form 1, so we're really close. So let's see what happened. The problem is that we are not saying txt here, name.text. Now let's press Ctrl F5 again. Now let's close our applications and let's run them again. So let's go here and let's minimize this and let's go here. And now I can say Felipe one more time, send hello Felipe. So as you can see, it is really easy to create a gRPC service using ASP.NET Core. As we learned, an ASP.NET Core application that uses gRPC is just like any other ASP.NET Core application that can have a connection to a database using Entity Framework Core. We can have controllers, we can use dependency injection, and we can use everything that we have learned in the past in ASP.NET Core. gRPC is basically just another middleware in our HTTP pipeline, so it can live in our normal ASP.NET Core application. If you like this video, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and let me know what you want me to cover next. Thanks!